Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Meadows Museum. May I please remind everybody to silence your cell phones or turn them off at this time? I wanted to let everybody know that we just received the programs brochure for the Chillida exhibition, and it's up on the table. If you'd like to grab a copy, At the Meadows is coming out very soon, but this is a good reference point for upcoming programming. And also just wanted to remind everybody here, you probably already know, but next Friday we do start the Friday morning lecture series on Murillo. So if you want to sign up for that, please check in at the front desk when we finish today. Also, please note that the exhibition is open to you following this lecture. Our speaker this morning is Luis Chillida, the seventh of 8 children born to the sculptor Eduardo Chillida and Pilar Belzunce. Luis Chillida is a great motorsports enthusiast and participated in numerous national and international motorcycle races from 1988 to 1997. In 1992, he began to work in Eduardo Chillida's office, managing exhibitions of his father's work. Between 1998 and 2000, he spent time working with the Cesar Manrique Foundation at Lanzarote, the Pilar and Joan Miró Foundation at Palma de Mallorca, and at the Tapies Foundation in Barcelona, where he broadened his knowledge of arts management. He has been involved in the Lindbergh Foundation since it was launched in 1991. This foundation is engaged in the recovery of industrial heritage, in particular, the history of iron in the Basque Country. His father was a founding member, and Luis acted as his representative until his death in 2002. At that time, Luis was appointed as a board member, and since 2008, he has served as a president of the board. Since 2007, he has been a member of VGAP's Management Board, an organization that manages artist rights pursuant to intellectual property law. In 2011, he was appointed vice president and is a member of the executive committee of VGAP. From September of 2000 until 2004, he served as the director of the Chillida Leku Museum. Until 2010, he was the director of communications and marketing for the museum, and he also has served as a member of the executive committee and of the management board. He is currently the president of the Eduardo Chillida Pilar Belzunce Foundation. We're so pleased that he's able to be with us for the opening of his father's exhibit today and to speak to us this morning in his program, Memory, Mind, Matter, the Public Art of Eduardo Chillida in Focus. So please join me in welcoming Luis Chillida.
Well, thank you, Scott, and well, you're welcome. And for me, it's really an honor to be here and to present this exhibition in Dallas. It's my first time here in Dallas, and when we were preparing the work that is here in the Meadows building with Pay, I worked together with my father. I see the work making, but just in the moment that the work came here, I was unable to come. So it's the first time I see the piece in his place, and it was really nice to see it. And well, I am going to try to talk to you today a little bit about it's mind matter, but I will try to make you in your mind how my father works. I think that it's important to see his work is a thing, but to try to understand the way he worked and which were the important things for him in this process of working. And I am going to try to explain you different things about his work. As Scott told, I started to work with my father since I finished my studies. And well, for me it was really nice to try to understand what my father was doing. Because all my life working with him, you try to understand art and how one man could be his whole life thinking in something like his art. And the couple that made, because I worked with my father and with my mother, both of them. Because my father was the one who made the sculptures and who worked in the art, but my mother was the one who take care of everything. He managed everything that my father could be able to do the things. I like very much how my mother explained it. My mother said that in his life, his work had been led to my father be able to go every morning to work without problems. And we're a big family, as Scott said, we are 8 children, so you think that that is a big job also for my mother. And my mother usually said that he has not only 8 children, he has another one that was my father. That was a big child, but it needed a lot of care also, and well, I will start making a very little biography of my father of some things, and stopping in some points in which I think that they are important to understand his work. Well, my father, when he was born in 1924 in San Sebastian, and when he was young, he was a great sportsman. He loved the sport. He made many kind of sport. And when he was 19 years old, he became the goalkeeper of the team of San Sebastian of football. But well, as my mother say, it was a good thing. In 1 year, they broke his knee, and he must let the sport. So that's why he, in that moment, when he was 20, he must decide what to do with his life. And in that moment, my father says always something that, for me, it's really important to understand. He always said that to take a decision, it's much more easy to try to know what you don't want than what you want. So in that moment, he started to think what he was going to do with his life, and at last, discarding many things that he thought that it was not what he wanted to do, at last he decided to start his studies in architecture. He thought that it would be able to become an architect. He loved in some way the work of the architect, and he started his studies in architecture in 1943, excuse me. And in the middle way of these studies, he started to be really disappointed with what he was learning. You must think that Spain was a country that in that moment was completely closed to all the foreign ideas. The studies were very academical, and he started to feel that that was not the way he wanted to continue. And in that moment he decided that instead of trying to become an architect, he wanted to try to become a sculptor. He said that for him architecture is a kind of art, but it's a kind of art that must give answers to the need of people. And a sculptor has the good thing that it must make only questions, not answers. So he decided to become a sculptor, and he never believed that that was possible to learn in a university. You must learn it, see many things, and opening your mind. So in that moment, when 1948 was the moment in which he went to Paris, and he stayed just 3 years living in Paris, where he made his first works. And was in Paris, what he was doing was every day going to the museums, to the bibliotheques, reading a lot, and opening his mind. And well, after these 3 years of Paris, it was the moment in which he decided that that time of learning, it was enough, and if he had something to do, he must try to find his own way. So he decided to go back to the Basque Country and to try to do his work and to find his own way of working. And in that moment he had the chance that when he came back to San Sebastian, my father and my mother, they were married in the 50s, and they didn't have a place for living. So one of his aunts let him a house in Hernani, a little village near San Sebastian, and the chance was that just in front of this house, it was the blacksmith of the village of Hernani working. And when my father arrived there, he saw this man working with the iron, with the forge, in a very dark place, and he started to feel that that was something to start to think about. So he went with this man to learn how to manage with iron, and also he said many times that in his time in Paris, he hadn't seen artists that work with iron directly forging, and he thought that it was a good idea, and also it was a relation with his country, with this use of iron that had been used for a very long time in our country. So after that moment he started to learn with this man how to manage with iron, and he learned very quickly. And one thing that is really nice, it was that this man that had the blacksmith of the village, when my father was there learning with other people that were learning to work as a blacksmith, this man went to talk with my father and said to him, Eduardo, you are doing things very strange here. I am trying to make these people learn how to work the iron, but for doing something practical, and what you are doing, you are making crazy everyone because they don't focus on what they must. So he said to my father, I give you the keys of my atelier, you live in front, and I work from 6 in the morning until 6 in the afternoon. So all the rest of the day is your atelier. So during his all his first works until 1957 that he made his own atelier. He worked there in the nights. During the night he worked there making his first pieces in iron, and it was this moment in which he started to work in a new way, to try to find his way. And well, one of the things that I think that is really important to notice about, we are going to talk a little bit also about the public works of my father, and one of the things that happened in that moment, I think that it was really important for his whole career. When my father started in the 54, he became one of the artists of the Mike Gallery. It was a gallery from Paris who started to manage with the work of my father. He had his first exhibition in 1951, but afterwards he became one of the artists of the gallery. And in the gallery he had friends of Calder, Giacometti, Meadows, they were all in the gallery. My father was the younger of the gallery. And he started to work with this gallery, and he had a really big pressure from the gallery that he must work as other sculptors, making multiples of the works. In that time, in the 50s, many artists make a work, they make a mold, and they make, in that time they say until 10 copies it was a unique work. And the galleries were saying to my father, you must work as other artists. They work like this, is the way of working in a sculptor. And my father didn't agree with that. He was saying that he didn't want to do this, but one of the things that the way he worked, my father was a man that always worked really slowly. He never wanted to be hurrying his work. For him, the time of working, it was the time not just only of working, it was the time of working, of thinking, of reposing, of going again with the pieces. He never had a timetable, I have to finish in this moment. No, he just was working, he stopped the pieces, he get another one. So in this way, all those years he could make 15, 18 pieces a year. And the galleries were saying, it's not enough, Eduardo, we need more pieces. The world is very big, there are a lot of museums, of collections around, and we don't have enough work, so we must work in this way, making the multiples. And well, in that my mother also started to talk with the gallery. My mother talked more with the gallery than my father, surely. So he started to talk, and he went one day to talk with my father to say to him, Eduardo, you must make a try. You say that you don't want to do this, but why don't you make a try? And you see it and you decide what you have to do. So my father decided 6 works that he had until that moment that he thought that could be able to be reproduced in bronze. And with these 6 works, they make 4 copies of each of them in Paris in an atelier in 1957. It's the only time they have made this kind of work as multiples. And when my father went to the atelier with my mother to see them, just in the moment they opened the door and he saw the original with the copies, he said to my mother, Billy is the name of my mother, he said, Billy, this looks as a shoe shop. This is not serious at all. He said, what has those pieces of what I work? My father loved to work in what he don't know. He didn't want to stop in what he knows. He always thought that an artist is a man that must work, given the step to work in what you don't know. The limit between an artisan and an artisan, my father always said, an artisan makes a very good job with materials. But what the difference, the artisan, each time he makes something, the same thing, he do it better because he's learning doing the same thing many times. Say, if an artist going that way, it's not possible. Say, each work must have something different, something unknown. So he was a man that loved to work listening the present. For him the time was something really important. And what the present, for my father, the present is just the limit between the past and the future. It has no dimension, this present, but everything you do it in the present. So he always loved to be in that moment completely free to change everything. He never had a planning, he was completely anti-planification. My mother tried to planificate and my father break it because he never wanted to have things planificated. He always loved to be completely free in his work. So in this way of working, the galleries always continued saying to my father, Eduardo, please make your mind. You must see that it's going to be impossible to work like this. You must think it again. And my father, thinking about this, he went one day to talk in 1957 with the gallerist to say him, Aimé was the name of Monsieur Mike. He said, Aimé, you are saying me that I must continue with this kind of work of multiples and be sure that I am never going to do it more. I done it once and I am never more going to do it. But he said, but I have a solution. You are saying me that I must multiply my work so people could know what I am doing. And I've been thinking a lot about this, and I have arrived just to the opposite solution. Why don't we multiply the owners instead of multiplying the works? And in that moment, Monsieur Knight was thinking, what are you talking about? My father was in that moment talking about the public works. You have here in Dallas the work that is in the Mason. Of who is that work? It's of you the day that you go there and you see it, but it has no one who is the proprietor of the work. And at last, most of you surely that know the work of my father because of his public works. So since that moment until the end of his life, his work had been focused in this kind of project. At last in his life, my father had made around 1,350 sculptures in all the scales, meaning once you have seen the exhibition, there are little scale sculptors with ideas, but of this number of sculptors, 50 of them, there are different public projects in Europe, in America, in Spain, in different parts in which he had worked. So in this way, he continued. At last he kept in the gallery, and after that moment it happened this, that my father get focused in public work, that we will talk about this in a moment. And also it happened another thing. It was the moment in which my father started to work in graphics, in graphic work. Mike was an editor also and have an atelier of etching, and my father loved to make drawings and things, so he started to work in the atelier of etching because the two-dimensional reproduction, it was allowed for him. When you work on etching, you work a basement to be printed, so that was a way of printing. Now, only if you think that my father in his life, he had made around 604 different etchings in different techniques. If you multiply that plus 50 more or less for each one, what most work of my father is in the world is the graphic work. They're much more than sculptors. It's much more known, his graphic and the way. Also, he worked always with the drawings that we will talk later about with the drawings, because I will talk a little bit about the exhibition we have upstairs and here behind. And well, in the way of working the public projects that I was telling you, one thing that is important is for my father, really basic in this kind of work, is the emplacement, the place. For my father, one sculptor must have a place. It's not the same, he doesn't make a sculpture and you put it where you want. Even many times, collector that brought pieces of my father, he went to his house to choose the place. Say, you must put it here or there, because the relation with a sculptor with his surrounding for my father was completely important to be in a special place. And the work with different spaces in all this kind of public project, there have been many things that he must think about. One that you could think that is, some people say, no, your father loved to do very big sculptures. I say, no. The big sculptures are when the space is a big space and needed that scale. My father worked in the scale, not in the size. He never talked about big or small. He said, what is big and what is small? Something is big or is small in relation with another thing, or with a place. If you place a sculpture behind a building, it must have a size to be there in the right scale. Or if you are in the cliffs as in San Sebastian, they must have a size, the sculptures. But they're not big or small. It's the size, the size it must have in that moment in his mind. So the way as he worked in this project, it was a really complicated, and because I told you that he never wanted to know exactly what he was going to do. But at the same time, he was making tries. You will see in his works that after the names, he has some Roman numbers. These Roman numbers is the number of times he have worked the same idea. Not the same piece, it's the same idea, but it's worked in another present, in another moment, in another dimension, and the next one it was not going to be the same. It was going to have the same aroma. Aroma, it was the way, as my father called this work, the aroma of the way to arrive to a project. It goes changing many times. Here in the drawings you have here in this part with the Meadows building and the work of music, on music, you will see some of the drawings of the different ideas. If you see the whole series, the piece that is here in Dallas is number 15. That means that there have been 14 before. Since Page talked with my father to make this project here in Dallas, the first one was made in 1988, and the first one and the second one, they were in a way also on music and thinking of St. Augustine, writings about music, but very different. Very different, such different that these pieces then, he changed it completely, and since the number 3 until the number 7, they were completely different. And when he made the number 7 was the moment in which he came for the first time here to Dallas, with Page to see the building that was in construction and to see the place. And when he go back, he changed again completely. And since the number 8, it changed, and from the 8 until the 50, they go focus more in the way as they are now, but well, in different scales, he was approaching to this idea and doing it. Then, in terms of scale, it was really complicated because he needed a big piece. And in that time, it was the time in which we knew a new factory where it was possible to work in a massive piece of iron. One of the things that you must notice in his work is that my father have never worked a hollow piece. He don't believe that that was possible because it was simulating something that it was not true. When you touch it and you say, quonk, quonk, you say, what is inside? My father say, I work with space. And to have one space that is not accessible inside a piece, what means? Means that you can do a very big piece and it's not going to be heavy. But for my father, if something is big, it must be heavy. It's a problem that you must try to think about how to do it. So in that way, when we knew this new factory in Reynosa that could start with very big pieces of iron, it was one of the first pieces that he made was this piece from here, from Dallas. If you see the round pieces, a piece of iron, I've been in the factory always with my father working them. A big piece of iron, it's always a square piece and a large piece of iron, massive iron. To make these round pieces, they go in the machines in the press, having boom, boom, and the piece goes moving a little bit. When you touch it, you feel it. You feel that it's not a perfect, you could do a perfect cylinder. But he was not looking at a perfect cylinder. He was seeing something in which the process of working, you can see it. For my father, it was very important that you feel this process of working, how the pieces were done. Because he tried to have a big relation with each material. And each material was taking him in a way or in another. There are series of works for public projects in which he have started in iron, he have continued in stone, and at last they were finished in concrete because the scale. So it's been changing, and it changed, the piece was changing. The idea not, but the piece was changing in this process. So all this kind of process, they take this large time. It was a large time in which he was trying to approach the idea. And then the technical problems also, for my father, was like un reto, how you say in English, like a challenge to say, well, this is difficult, we will try to do it. One thing that I love when I was going with my father to the factories, when we went to this new factory, the first day we went there, I was with him and with my mother. I love how my father explained to the people of the factory what they were going to do. Because you must think that in the factory, You have the director of the factory, the engineers, the techniques. They all wanted to know what they were going to do, because they are used to make an engine for a boat or things completely precise that they must work on. And my father said, I must talk with all of them to explain them what we are going to do. So he put them all around, and my father took a very little sculptor in his pocket and said to them, well, we are going to work in something that I will show you. He took the small sculptor and he said, we're going to do something similar to this little piece I have here, but I need it in a bigger scale. We're going to work in a scale of about 5 meters tall, so you must think about it. And he let this sculptor to all of them. They all look it and see it, and they start to think how they could manage to work it. Okay, when they all finish to see the sculptor, they give it again to my father, and my father put it again in his pocket and say, and you are not going to see it more. You've seen it once, but no more, because we are not going to do this. We are going to do something similar. And I love to work in what I don't know, in the unknown. So if we do this, we are going to work, you are used to work knowing what you have to do. And surely if I say you do this perfectly, you will, all of you think we do it like this, you will have process to reproduce it. But I say, but I don't want to reproduce this one. I just want to hear the iron, to feel its movement we do, and then we will see what happened. One thing that you have in the forge is that you can never go back. If you start this like this, it's impossible to say, oh no, I go back. No, from this you continue. And you continue. Well, you see this one, when you see it up, that we have here in the brochure, you will see that it has many things. There are a lot of different. It would be completely impossible to do it again. Even if you want to do the same, if you are not having a process of reproduction, it's impossible to repeat it. So in this way of working, my father said, and one thing that it was really nice of the work they were going to do, because for my father, the most difference between his little atelier and the factory, it was the strongest of the machines. He said, they are like my arms. My arms could move a piece of iron small. But a big piece is the same. It's the crane, do the same movement that your hand, and the hammer is the same as the press. So it's the same process of working, but in a different scale, but working directly with the material. That way of working, to explain them what they were going to do, my father told them, you must think that when we are going to work in one of these big pieces of iron, it's sure that always is a limit. Always is a limit in which you are blending an iron, and it could break. Depending on the force you have and the piece that it is, it could be that that goes wrong and breaks. Always is a limit. And my father said them, and if you think in this limit, for example here, this is the limit, my father said, if you think that this is the limit, he said, you as engineers, techniques that knew what you have to do, you are never going to arrive to the limit, because you don't know what is going to happen there. You are going to stop before. And he said, and I am a crazy man that loves to go against this limit. I want to try to know what is after the limit, because I don't believe that the limit is something static that is there. Many times you try to arrive and you discover that you can go a little further, but you are taking a risk, and you are doing something that you don't know what is going to happen. And that was what he loved of his work, to go in this process in which he was trying to find new ways of approaching to the material and to understand the material. So in this way of working, he never knew or wanted to know what it was going to happen each day. Each day we go to the factory, it was a surprise. And we go back in the car home, and he was saying, oh, incredible, that movement that today had been perfect. And then the next day, another one. And some days he can, this one we will see, I have to think tomorrow, well, 4 days later, because it must get cold and hot again, the piece, what we will do. And all this process of creation was the moment most important for him. I always thought that my father was leaving his work while he was doing them. When they were finished, they were back. He was thinking in another piece. When one day one journalist asked my father, Mr. Chillida, what is your favorite piece? my father said, my favorite piece is the one that I am doing now. In this moment is my favorite. I am focused on this, so it's my favorite is this one. So all his pieces have been the favorite in the moment he was doing them. There's no one that says, no, it could be more important in some things, one or other, but for him, each one had his moment. So in this way of working, for example, we talk about the iron, because here the piece you have in Dallas is a piece of iron, but also we could talk about the pieces in stone. In stone, the problem, it had been a great problem, and we continue having it, his family, so we still with it. Because one of the things that happened with my father with the stone works, here you have some alabaster of Elegy of the Light, of Bright of Light, it's in English, a big alabaster with the holes inside. In the stone it was completely different, the work. It was carving inside and looking for the space that was inside the big stones. So in this way of working in stone, the problem of the scale, it was much more big. He thought during many times that it was impossible to have a solution, because the problem he had is that he was seeing these holes he make in the stones as such a big hole in which we must be able to walk inside to see it from inside. The scale that was demanding to him was such a big scale that where could you have a stone of that scale? My father never worked with different pieces adding one to other. It was a singular piece. In this singular piece, you can go to try to buy a very big stone. Well, it could be 10 tons and it could be 4 meters tall and 1 meter, but it's not enough. Never was enough. All this work in the stone, it has a very big relation with architecture. There are very architectural ways in what he was working. So it could be seen as a maquette of a building, but not as a sculptor had to arrive to this scale. So he was like in a kind of a spiral in which he never arrived to the solution until one day that he was traveling in Bretagne in France. No, Bretagne, no, it was in the center of France. And he went to see one big quarry where they were taking the stones. And in that moment was the first time that he realized that the people that were in that mountain taking the stones, that he wanted to see the stones for work, he said, but the material is the mountain. The material is not the stone they take. The stone they take is the same as I do with my stones. He said, why couldn't I get in touch with them and that they take the stone with an order? And instead of destroying a mountain, we make a big hole inside and we make a big space inside the mountain, and the mountain continues as it is, and people take the stone from inside. It's a little utopical idea, because it was much more expensive to take it like this than in the other way, and it's been for a long time working in this project that it was not done at last. He was died before, and we continue working with the Canary government because the project at last finds his place. We've been trying to find a quarry, a big mountain to work. We've been in Sicily, in Iceland, in Finland, looking for mountains, and at last he found a mountain that he thought that was perfect in the Canary Island. And the project was done there, and well, he haven't got enough time. His life was finished, and we continue trying to finish this project. It's not easy. For us, it's a big responsibility to try to finish it, but at the same time, it was a big dream of my father to convey. I think that it would be, in some way, one big representation of his whole work, his problems with the scale, with materials, with public work. It would be something incredible. But well, it's complicated because it's not an easy project, and we'll see if some moment would be possible. As well as you see, in each project it goes from one side. Now we could talk a little bit also about the pieces we have out upstairs in the exhibition. That is a really nice exhibition that was come here from the Italy Museum in St. Petersburg, that had been there exhibited and then had come here. And this exhibition, it tried to have different kind of materials, but I think that it has a big importance, the paper. I think the paper, if I think in the work of my father, the most he had worked all his life was the paper. The paper was always. Even when he was working, my father have usually his atelier and his studio in the garden of our house. And always was the same. The atelier was up and the studio was down. The atelier, it was the mind that was thinking, and when he was thinking, he was making drawings, cutting the papers, doing things, and then he go down to the atelier to work with the iron or with the stone. Then he goes up to think, where he have the music there, and he thinks about what he was going to do. And in this way of working, always in relation with the mind and the hand, for my father, the most important thing was always the mind. Say the hand must do what the mind say you to do. It cannot be the hand who do the things. One of a curious thing that happened to my father when he was very young, when he gave up in his studies of architecture, my grandfather told him to go to the School of Art in Madrid to try to learn. He went there and he was making drawings, and my father was very abilitous making drawings. And it was an academical drawings of statues, and he made it perfectly. And everybody was saying to him, "Oh, Eduardo, what nice drawings! You have a very good hand for drawing." And he started to think that couldn't be art. He said, "Art couldn't be that I have a good hand for drawing. It must be something more intensive for your sensibility, your mind on it." So he started to think, what can I do to fight against this facility? So he decided to start to make his drawings with the left hand. And he went to draw there with the left hand. And he was not abilitous at all. It was very slow drawing. But every line he was making, it was made by his mind, no, but by his hand. And in this way he started to make his drawings. After that he get also very abilitous with the left hand. But he has always this process of doing the things very slowly. If you see him drawing, it was always very, very slow. He was seeing perfectly that his mind was before. He was thinking everything he was doing. He goes very, very slow. So in this process of trying to slow the things, to have always your mind before, it started when he was 19 years old, and he left his studies. So it had been all his life, this process of having first your mind and then the way of doing the things. So here we have some different works in paper that comes, the drawings, for example, the drawings of the hands. My father had been always drawing the hand, but not the hand as a hand, the hand as a piece that you could have the spaces from inside, from outside their hand, that could be a mountain or could be a hole. It depends. And also, my father had a sense of humor, and he many times said the thing of drawing the hand is that I always have it there to draw it with one hand or with the other. He put it in the table, he draw one, another, he do it, and it was something that he was always making these drawings. You will see up, and you will see the drawings that sometimes it's only a little line, then it stops, then continue, and your mind will complete what you see. And each of you will see it in a different way. It's not only one way to see it. But also with the paper it happened something that my father, he didn't also only make the drawings with pencil, with ink, or with biro. He also make his drawings cutting the papers. He start to cut the papers, even in some drawings, and he start to work the technique he knew, that was the collage. That was putting glue between the papers and making collage. He was working during a long time, collage in his studio, but he had a very big problem with the glue. The glue was a material that he hated. It was a dirty material, and my father was very clean in his table, and it was a material he hated. So he worked the collage, but he was never completely convinced with the glue. And he started to try to make something without glue. And one day he came home to have lunch, and he said to our mother, he said, "Billy, I done something incredible. I have made one collage without glue." And the collage without glue was his first gravitations. We'll see after the gravitation, that the papers, instead of having glue between, they are cosidos, they are salt, and they are handling. So in this way, it paper is one, so they are more three-dimensional papers. It's not a two-dimension. And my father said, how could you compare the space with the glue? The space is much nicer than the glue, surely. So after that, he led the collage. He always worked with this kind of papers, in which many times even the shadows, there's not color, there's nothing. The shadows of one paper or the other make the movement. There is upstairs one gravitation of the deep is the earth, that these are all the thinkings about the mountain that is in front of an alabaster piece with the same name. You will see the ideas of both of them, they are connected, they are one in front of the other. There are ideas in paper and then are in stone, and he was thinking in a mountain, so it's all connected. In all this kind, when you see the pieces, you must try to think, my father loved to try to think in his pieces, what would be the measure of a man inside them? It could be a very small sculptor, and you think, no, a man must be in this size, or in that one. So the sculptor changed of size, so it was the way of finding this scale of the process of working. So this was always really important. So I think that having here these papers, it's really nice because you see all this relation between the paper and the sculptor. There's never exact drawings. Here down we have some ones that are really nice because it was with the relation with Pei. When Pei was sending to my father the plans of the building here in Dallas, my father makes some drawings of the first ideas that then they change, and write Pei saying, no, I am thinking this or that. So it was a way in which they have their relation to try to find. But usually it's a relation, but it's not a clear a boceto, how you say exactly what he was going to do. No, it was just different ideas. So here we have that. We have also the collage, we have different drawing, and then we have the part of the artist books. The artist books, my father always said that was for him was one of the most complicated things to do, because he was not trying to illustrate a book. No, he was trying to understand the writings and to do something in relation with what he was reading, or his sense of that book. So it takes a long time for him. He was trying and trying, he changed it. It was very complicated to try to find this relation between what he was reading and what he was going to illustrate, how he was going to do it. So here we have 3 books of artists, but one of them, the one of Jorge Guillén, is nice. Here in the States is nice because Jorge Guillén and my father, they are both Spanish, and they moved here in the States, in Cambridge, in Massachusetts, in Harvard University. In 1971, my father came as a visiting professor, and we've been here one winter, from January to June, and was then the moment he knew Jorge Guillén. And my brother Eduardo, that is up there, and myself, we came here because we were the youngest with my father and my mother and one of my sisters. The rest of the family stayed in Spain. And near us lived Jorge Guillén. So they make friends, and they started to talk. And one of the things that it was really nice, you will see that in the book, there are some parts that are written with the hand by Guillén. Because in that moment, 2 years before, in 1969, my father made a book with Heidegger, the German philosopher, in which my father decided the size of the book and that it must be written in the stone by Heidegger, handwritten, because my father said that it was very interesting, his calligraphy. So it was the make and the relation between the work and the calligraphy. And Guillén knew this and said to my father, when he saw my father, he said, I want to say you, Mr. Chillida, that I have also a very nice calligraphy. And at last they make a book. This book is of 1973. When my father came back, they continue. And in this book, Más allá, is where is the phrase, lo profundo es el aire. The deep is the air that he take for this project. It comes from the poetry of Jorge Guillén. So you see that almost everything is in relation with the different things he was doing. I don't know how we are of time because I start to work. But well, also if you want to make me question, I could continue working, interesting because, well, we have these pieces, we have also the clay pieces upstairs. The clay pieces is another material in which it was curious the way as my father arrived to this material, because when he gave up in his studies of architecture in Madrid, my grandfather knew an sculptor in Madrid who worked with clay, and said to my father, Eduardo, go there and see how a sculptor works. And this man that worked with clay, my father went one day to his atelier to see him, and this man said, my father, put your hands in the clay, move it, and you must have the sense of the material. And my father, when he put the hands inside this soft material, it was something that he hated. He said, surely, he went out and he talked with his father, and he said, the only thing I have learned today is that I am never going to use the clay. It's a material horrible. So all his life he was not going to use the clay, and when he was working in the summers in the Mike Foundation in St. Paul de Vence, well, now it's the Mike Foundation, it was the house of the artists, and they have the atelier of etching, they have the atelier of clay, and my father never go to the atelier of clay. He would go to the atelier of etching, and they were always saying, you must try, and my father, no, I don't want to go there, I don't want to have nothing with the clay. And one day he was smoking one pipe, he started to hear a noise, boom, boom, and it was one noise that you start to think, but that noise could be made by the clay. It's a hard noise. He said, the clay I knew it would be puff, but that one, boom, boom. He said, it's really nice. He started to hear it, and boom. And he got the curiosity, he went there, and he went to talk with the therapist and said, how is this clay that makes this noise? He said, no, this is a kind of terracotta. It's a clay that we make a mixture with a broken stone so it gets more dense, and it's a way of working different. He started to feel it, he touched it, and he said, oh my goodness, this is a nice stone. He touched it, he moved it a little bit, and it was the moment he was going to go back. This was in St. Paul, he was going to go back home. He just touched it and go down. And while he was at home, he started to think that that was something interesting, and he called Mike and said, next summer I am going to work with the clay. I am going to think this year what can I do with it, but I feel that it's something, as we say in the Basque Country, pelota para entrar al aire. It's complicated. It's the people who play, how you say pelota? There's a handball. When you have a very nice ball to hit it, he said this is like that. It was. So he said this is a very nice way that I must think on it, and then he started to work. And the clay was the work of the summers. In the summer, he go to St. Paul, and after he made the Menorca kind of house we have, because was the moment in which he didn't need no one to help him. In the work of iron, you always need another one who get you. He have his assistant, because you cannot do it alone. You could do very, very small things alone, but you always need another one in your atelier. But in the clay, he didn't need no one to help him. He could do all the process. He was in the work, he must mark him with a piece of wood or with a round piece. I mean, so he could do all, he managed all himself. So this was the work of the summers. And every summer he worked with, because for my father, the most important thing was working. He said, my vacancy is working the clay. It's the vacancy of iron or the vacancy of other project. It was just this particular way of working with the clay. Then also this kind of clay, it was when he put it in the oven to cook it, because it's just like cooking in the oven. It was an oven with wood burning, so he was deciding the different part of the oven, because could be more red, more black, depending if it's in the part of flame or in the part of fume of the oven. It changed the colors and the finish of the pieces. And something that was interesting, it was that when they make the big oven, it was usually in the big oven they were around 30 pieces. When they finished, my father looked at them and started to decide which one they were going to be destroyed. Almost every time he destroyed 4 or 5 of the 30, and most of the time it was he destroyed them because they were too perfect. And the therapist say, but those ones are the better ones. And my father said, no, it's the better one for you that you are a therapist. For me, it's not the better one. It has something that it has no life. So it was too ceramic, so he broke them. And this man Hans Spinner, has a place where he threw these pieces for breaking them, because after breaking them, they make a mass for mixture again, for make again this kind of terracotta. And he called it the cemetery of the Chillidas. It was where they threw them, and he has this big hole. And also another thing very nice, when he was working, my father put like a piece of wood up the pieces, he worked them, and to the ceramist he let him only touch the wood. He said, if someone make a study of my work, I don't want never that one of your fingers could be marked there. It's something that I am going to touch it only myself. You're never going to touch the clay when it's being worked. When it finishes, yes, but in the process you only touch the wood piece. And the wood piece, my father put in French, territoire basque. Because you say, this is my territory. You cannot touch this. So it was this way of working. So now, if you want to make me some questions, I will be really pleased to answer you. Long relationship. For my father, music, he always said that one work of art, it must have at least two components. One is the poetry, another one is the music. The music is in the sense of measure, of rhythm, of time. My father loved the music always. And this kind of relation with the music happened always in his mind, because he thought that music is a way of working. It is, for him, was like a material. He many times said that for him the silence in music is like the emptiness in a sculptor. You couldn't have music without silence. You couldn't have a sculptor without emptiness. So this relation between the music and his work, I think it had been all his life. He was always reading. My father was always reading different as St. Augustine from the 4th century, but also many other people who talk about the music and the relation with music, with mathematics, with measures, with also, he was plenty of youth in his bibliothèque. I think that 50% of his books talk about music, different music. So he loved very much all this relation. Also, my grandmother was a singer. He sang, so he has this relation since he was young. So he loved very much the music. The problem that he have is that he have not a good ear to the music. So to play music, he was not good. He loved the music, but he was unable to express music exactly. But he loved it, and that's why a lot of his work, I think we have had at least 4 or 5 different exhibitions, big exhibitions, in all the works in relation with the music, because music is in every part. That's why he say always this the music and the poetry must be in every work of art. So I think that's. ¿Él? Sí. Dímelo en español. Sí. Now, he's saying that, well, my father, he writing in some writings, he said that his masters were Debussy and Bach. My father compared Bach, he loved very much Bach music. music. He even make a little poem to Bach that I am going to say it in Spanish because in English it's going to be complicated. That is, he said para Bach, moderno como las olas, antiguo como la mar. Nunca siempre diferente, pero siempre nunca igual. So this relation, because the music of Bach, for him, he has this relation like the waves of the sea. We all say the wave. Say, the waves, every wave is different, and it's modern. The sea is ancient, the wave is modern, but they are all different. And in this relation, it's like the music of Bach that you hear it, you discover that it's a similarity, but each one is different in each moment. Also, music is playing the present. Then you never can do it exactly the same. Always have a different component, a different way of expressing. So I think that was really important for him. Yes, that one over there. That is my youngest brother, Eduardo, and he's a painter and a sculptor. Also my elder brother, Pedro, is also a painter and a sculptor. I have a sister that make all kind of things. He paints, he sculptures, he dances, he make music. Another one is writer, so there are many artistic. Not me, but all the rest. Well, yes, it's a nice question. Well, the secret was, first of all, I think that he was a very familiar man. Yeah, he had his time, but always he have his atelier in our house. So he was not going out or coming. He was in the garden of our house. He has his atelier, his studio, and we would go with our friends. We were playing there. And it didn't matter. We were entering, playing with the sculptors, going up, down. It was there. It was something that for us was useful. And then also they usually travel quite a lot. When we were young, sometimes they take us. Other ones it was impossible because we were too much, the whole family. But well, I think they tried to have this relation. And also in this way, my mother was really important. My mother, in the Basque Country, the mother is important. So she was taking care of all of us to try to have a union in the family and to have all in this sense of being together. And I think that was the most important thing. So at last we were lucky to have my father there, because my father never say you nothing, compromise, he make you think. And that was nice, because for example, I remember when I was young, perhaps sometime I go home with bad qualifications in mathematics. And my father said me, "Oh, Luis, the problem is that you have a very bad teacher." If you have a nice teacher, you will see that you will love mathematics. And that was your, instead of saying you that you are doing well, no, he was always doing things like that and make you think about that you can do the things. And always trying to take each of us to do the things you wanted in the life. He was not trying to press you at all. Even my brother Eduardo, that is there, that he was, since he was young, we were the two youngest. I am the 7 and he is the 8, and we were always together. And Eduardo, since he was a very little child, he was sure that he was going to be an artist. So in the school he was not too good. He didn't love that. He made drawings of the teachers and things like that, but nothing more. And my father said, well, it's what he's going to be. He was not worried at all. He said, surely he's going to be an artist because he's focused in that. In my case, it was different. I was a student, and I love motorsport and other things, and he loved it also. He helped me. And one of my uncles died in an accident in motorcycle, but my father helped me to rise because he thought that was that I wanted to do in that moment. So I think he was very tolerant. One of the things I think it's in what you will tell me important is that my father was a man completely tolerant with the others. He was with himself, he was demanding for him always the best, but he was very tolerant with the other ones. He always think that things might be in a way, but he was not going to try to take you to another way that is not yours. So I think that that was important in this relation and in this kind of family we have. Well, so thank you very much, and I think I hope that now when you see the exhibition you will try to think about what we have been talking. Thank you.